everyone, and welcome to our podcast. We're so glad that you decided to tune in with us today. If you guys didn't already know, we have other episodes, so don't forget to check those out. I'm Alex.
I'm Ryan.
And we're so glad that you decided to listen. So today, we're here with our friend Jolly. And if you guys don't already know, Jolly serves here at Church in the Valley. So Jolly, why don't you tell us, what is it that you do here?
I am the worship director here at CIV.
Nice. So for those who don't already know, what does that look like? What hats and roles do you take on here at Church in the Valley that makes the worship director?
Yeah, so I basically structure the whole service on Saturday mornings. I work alongside with Pastor Nim and Pastor Abraham to do those things. I work during the week to make the set lists. I also try and mentor our young people in the church for those who are interested in the worship ministry and to kind of help them just grow up learning about those things because I know I didn't have that opportunity when I was younger, and so this is a great space for them to grow up and learn from that as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for what you do here. So I mean, it was definitely a journey. And we're talking about faith journeys here. So how is it? So tell us what you had to go through and how it is it that you're here with us today here at Church in the Valley.
Yeah, so coming to CIV, I didn't come here until 2017 officially. And so I graduated from high school back in 2015 from Fraser Valley. And from there, right away went to Berman University. I did a major in music and a minor in psychology because I was thinking my end goal was to be a music therapist. So I did a year there, but I didn't finish there because I had to come back home and deal with some family things. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going to take a year off and then go back to school. That year turned into 3. And so in those 3 years, I just worked in different places. But then I found myself at CIV when I came back home. I had Josh Jameson come and ask me. He was like, hey, do you want to lead a few Saturdays with me here at CIV? I said, sure, why not? You know. So when I came back, it was probably like 2016, I started doing worship here at CIV under Josh Jameson. And then I kind of slowly came under him for mentorship and then kind of fully dove into the worship ministry when it hit 2017. And so from there, I kind of finally realized, okay, maybe this is something I want to do because I always knew I wanted to do something with music. But then coming back from university, from Berman, everything was kind of shot for me because I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And so I just loved being in ministry. I loved people, just seeing people grow through worship. And obviously music comes hand in hand with that. And so I started thinking about it a lot. And then I found out that Trinity Western, one of the Christian universities here in Langley, they had a worship program. And I said, okay, like maybe I'll look into it. I'll see like if it's a good fit for me. I went and I did an interview with them. I asked them a couple questions about about that lane of study there. And it was pretty new then. And it was kind of just a startup program. So I was like, okay, well, I'll try it out. But if those of you who don't know, Trinity is a pretty expensive school. And I was like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. But around that time, It Is Written Canada had filmed my testimony, my life testimony, and it was being featured across Canada in different churches. And so there is this one older couple here at CIV. They had watched my my interview with them, and they were just really inspired to kind of come alongside of me, and just kind of help me through my journey and where I want it to be. And so they actually sponsored me to go to Trinity, and which was awesome, but also at the same time, I was only at Trinity for a year because it was a startup program. And so I was kind of sad because then after the year was done, I get the email saying, we're not continuing this program anymore because we don't have enough students coming in for it. So I was like, okay. So then I just remember sitting in my room. I was like, okay, God, like, what do you actually want me to do?
Yeah. Because
I felt like, okay, this is where I needed to be. And this is what I think God wanted me to do. And so it's kind of weird, but I was scrolling through Instagram one afternoon, and this ad for Bethel Music College popped up, and they were getting students already to sign up for this program. And I was like, maybe this is something, like, this is where God wants me next.
Yeah.
I looked into it, and I told my aunt about it, and she was like, I don't know, like, you know, you do what you want to do, you know? And so I was like, okay, honestly, I'm just going to take this leap of faith and do this college. But at the same time, Bethel College, if you don't know, is a stem off of Bethel Church in California. So money is in American and not Canadian. And so that was another hitch for me. But the same couple that had sponsored me at Trinity also sponsored me for Bethel.
Wow.
And so that program was basically a condensed program of 2 years into 9 months.
Okay.
And so I did that program in 9 months, and I finished. And so after that, I was still working at CIV, but not as a worship director yet, because Josh Jameson was still here. And so fast forward to, I think it was 2018, like end of 2018, Josh, he comes and talks to me, and he's like, hey, Loma Linda is wanting to interview me, and because they're opening up a new contemporary campus, worship campus at Loma Linda University. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, I wasn't really thinking twice about it. And then he was like, I might take the job because as far as I know, I'm the only one they are asking, right? And they're trying to recruit. And I was like, okay, cool. You know?
Okay.
Yeah. And then he was like, I was talking to my dad, and I was saying, like, if I take this job, then I think Jolly would be the perfect fit to take this role. I just remember looking at him, and I was like, okay. Because, like, at the time I was 20.
Yeah.
I was
wow.
I was 20 years old, and I was like, honestly, like, I don't even have, like, the right degree to, like, do all these things. Like, I literally just graduated and got the certificate from Bethel Music College. And now you're asking me, like, if you leave, you're asking me to take your place.
Yeah.
And I was like, those are big shoes to fill. And CIV is not a small church, you know. And so eventually he did get the job. He moved to California, and I stepped into that role as a worship director. And I think that was probably back in 2019 when I officially started doing being in this
position
as a worship director. So there's a lot of, like, weaving and bobbing through the last few years to kind of get to where I am now.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. I mean, sometimes we never know, like, the places where God's going to push us or take away opportunities we never really understand the bigger picture, but that's amazing that, like, and also nice to know that there's people out there as well rooting for you, and they want to see you succeed. So, yeah. So, when did you feel, though, like that was God, like, saying, like, hey, like, because obviously when Josh was asking you, or like telling you, kind of, he wasn't really asking. He was like, hey, like, you know, I'm gonna and he just put your name out there. When did you think that, like, you were like, okay, like, this is it, like, this is what I want to do? Because you said 20, and putting that in perspective, it's like, wow, that was a while ago.
Yeah.
And, like, but, like, you've
ago.
grown, and also, like, yeah, I mean, ministry been your life. When did you, like, know that this is where God wants you?
Yeah, I think it was in 2018. I remember having a few meetings with Pastor Dave and Josh, and I was telling them my plan for life, for at least for career-wise. And I sat down with them and I said, I really want to look into this because I know that I've been wanting to do something that involves music and involves people. And this worship ministry has both. But then I was telling them, I know, especially in our church context and SDA context, like, there's nothing like this.
Yeah.
And at least here, in Canada. And Josh was the only one.
Yeah.
Right. But on paper, it wasn't worship director. He was our young adult pastor. Yeah. But to do something like that.
Yeah.
And I was really going back and forth with it because at the same time, I was like, can I really make this as a career? But then I really fell in love with ministry.
Yeah.
And I really saw the value in it. And in my mind, I was like, I don't understand how our churches don't have someone, to really push worship through the culture in our churches. And so, yeah, I think that was around 2018 was when I really was like, okay, I think this is what I want to do. Yeah, and I just fell in love with ministry then.
Yeah.
And it was easy because also, Josh would always talk to me about these things and really try to tell me what could be in our church. And it just got me excited to see that goal in mind and to see how we could get there. And I wanted to be a part of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's like, honestly, like I've seen like how different CIV is in that aspect, and like I feel like we're so blessed to just have an environment where we're so like people are so welcoming with the things that we're trying to do here and that you're trying to do here, that you have done here. And yeah, it's so special that we just have this opportunity to serve in such a safe space. I guess like obviously there's going to be people that are a little bit weary, but I think for the most part, like we've seen how your actions have flourished so far. But I want to kind of dial back to when you first accepted the job. You said you were 20. That's really young.
That is young, yeah.
And last episode, the couple past episodes, we've been even talking about young adult leaders and what that looks like in the church. So I just want to ask you, like, how the church community responded to a 20-year-old taking over the worship, and how that experience was for you.
It was not good. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah,
like,
be real,
it was not good at first. I thought it was going to be like sunshine and rainbows, I was so excited. Like, I was young and I was like, okay, I get to do all these things. I get to introduce the church to all these new things. And I just remember my first 2 months, it was probably the worst 2 months of ministry that I've ever had, because I just remember going into my office just crying, like after every service or during the week planning the service, because, not going to lie to you, every single week there was always something negative coming through. If it was either in person, to one of our pastors, through email, like it was just constant, like all the time. And so I just felt so discouraged. And I would always ask God, like, why, if you wanted me in this position, like, why are people just being so rude.
Yeah, like, why are you being mean to
If I could ask, and if you can remember, like, what were some of the things that people were saying? I don't know if that's a little dicey, but
It's a
we're
name
being
drop,
real.
name
We're
drop.
being real. This
Yeah.
is real stuff.
You don't have
Right
a
here.
name drop, but maybe.
No,
name drop,
I
no
won't
name drop.
No, there's a lot of like one of the more nicer ones, I guess you could say. Like they're like, oh, like why do we need a worship director? You know,
Okay.
it's we just can just pick music, like easy peasy. Like whatever. And then another one was, well, she's young. What does she know?
Dang.
Like, what is she going to contribute? What can we learn from her?
Yeah.
Because I was 20. Like, I
Yeah.
was 20.
Yeah.
Okay?
Crazy.
I wasn't like this 35-year-old or 40-year-old who has had the college experience or the university experience or the degree or this life experience. I literally was a baby,
Just a baby.
And so, yeah, there was like those things. And then a lot of the things were more so of the way I worshiped. Because coming to CIV, for those of you who don't know, Alder Grove Church was the church first before CIV came to be. And back in Alder Grove, it's a lot more traditional. They would sing those older 2000 worship songs, like How Great Thou Art, or How Great Is Our God, those stuff. And that was the most contemporary you'd get. When we moved into CIV, the culture kind of shifted just a touch, but it was enough to rattle people. And then once I came into play, then it was like everyone was like freaking out because they're like, there's this young female in this leadership.
Yeah.
And so it came down to how young I was. It came down to how I was worshiping. It came down to even to the way I was dressed. And then they would start seeing the shift of how the worship team would be. And so a lot of the people just saw the very surface level of change instead of really trying to understand like why change was happening.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's tough. I mean, like, I think, and I'm grateful as well for the way that CIV is going in terms of, like, young people being in ministry and also leading. Because I know, like, for you at that moment at age 20, like, that's tough. Like, to have the adults just to be, like, nitpick everything that you do instead of having support, which I think is 100% needed more than, like, to be opinionating on every little thing. It's right. Like, you're right. It can be discouraging. And kudos to you for sticking through it, you know, regardless of all the, like, and, like, I'm sorry that, like, it even had to come down to the way that you, like, your appearance, which is not fair, honestly. And also, like, just knowing you've handled yourself really well and you're so strong. And just to know also, like, as a female, I think in ministry, like, that's powerful.
Hard.
Yeah, and it's hard. But it's powerful that you stuck through it regardless of everything. And, like, yeah, like.
Why'd you stay?
Yeah.
Can I ask that?
Yeah.
Why'd you stay?
Yeah, I think just things that questions that people ask me all the time. They're like, why do you like your job? And I think it comes hand in hand to why I stay. And my answer is always, I love to see how people grow in their walk with God, especially in their music ability. And, like, that's my favorite part. I was just telling Alex yesterday, I was texting her, and I was watching her live stream over, and then I told her, I was like, you know what? You have grown so much in your worship and your leadership, because I just remember from, like, day one when I first had Alex on the team, she was so shy, she was so timid, and I remember having her just even do the welcome one time. She was so nervous. She was like, what do I say? Like, what do I do? And I said, just welcome people to church,
Yeah.
Just as easy as that. Like, you don't have to be complex about it.
I said
But-
good afternoon. It
Yeah.
was really bad. That's
She
how
did say good
nervous I
afternoon.
was. Oh,
I was like,
goodness.
that's fine. We're getting there.
Was
you
it when
know?
church was still at 11?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like
You're valid.
Like it was like
Kind of
good
afternoon.
evening. Or
Yeah.
like,
But now,
Yeah.
like, when I watched the service from this past week, just the way she led our church while she talked about her experience and the way, worship was leading her.
Mhm.
It was, of course, like, it was a lot more articulate, but just her confidence in leading our church into worship, and also her confidence in leading, if that's singing, or our team as well. And that's like my favorite part. And I think that's why I stayed, because I wanted to also be that person to encourage either our young or old to just dive into worship as it is, because worship is such a sacred thing. And I feel like a lot of people complicate it to a point where it becomes so nitpicky,
yeah.
right? But yeah, I think the main reason why I stayed was because I just loved seeing the growth in people in their walk with worship and with God.
I guess, like, even because I've come from a pretty traditional church, a pretty traditional background, and I've seen, like, the small shifts that happen that rattle people. But even the church that I go to back home is still super traditional, and I like it that way. I think it should stay that way. But coming here, it was a very different experience. And I'm sure for the people who were transitioning during that time where you were taking over, whatever rattled them, it must have just been so, like, out of mind for them.
Yeah.
So I guess from that point to now, how are things different? How are they the same? What were some of the things that you did to make sure that you weren't rattling people so that they left?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's obviously still a lot of people here at this church who have stuck around, and who enjoy the music now.
Yeah.
So I haven't been here a while, and I can still see that. So what are some of the things that you had to do to get to where we are now?
Yeah, I had to slow down, because when I first started, I was very excited. I wanted to do all these things. And I just remember one of the pastors saying to me, they said, baby steps. Baby steps is key, especially for change, because people don't like change.
Yeah.
Humans just get crazy when change happens. And so I was like, okay. I guess we'll take it one step at a time, one day at a time. And also, I became more relational with our church family. So I really tried to get to know people, because I found that, especially on this platform, it's hard for people to follow you if you don't have a relationship with them, and if they don't know who you are. And so I really took into consideration, and I tried to make an effort to get to know people around me and in this church and in the community. And then I kind of, it became more easier for people to lean into worship, because they saw who I was first, instead of the worship, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so those were the biggest two things that I did. I just slowed down. I really tried to get to know CIV and its context, and then just being relational with people was also an important thing.
Yeah. I mean, and that's not to say also, I feel like even like for me, and I know others, we stuck through it, and we saw, like, and I want you to know you are appreciated in everything that you've done. Like, you've made a way for us as well in the way that we worship. And I know there's people that also, like, it's hard to, you see your vision, you want to execute it immediately.
Yeah.
And I know people who have stuck around, they saw your vision and they're here for it. And I know it's unfortunate, some people don't see that, they end up leaving. But I think during that as well, like even for me, the reason why I came to church in the Valley was because of the music. And I know there's other people like me who moved to this church because of the way we worship here and the way we're also going forward even now, the change that's going as well. And I know we're going to attract more people in the way that we worship, in the sense of like, we're here for the people, and this is how we're going to do it here at CIV. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you have people in your corner,
Yeah,
through and through.
it's been interesting because there's a few, even like the older generation here at CIV,
Mm-hmm.
they were the ones, right? They were the ones who, like, I really rattled their cage.
Mm-hmm.
But now I see a lot of them who have stayed. Like, I'm always so in awe because I see them, their walls have broken down.
Yeah.
They really lean into
Yeah.
worship now. Some of them even are a little bit more expressive in their worship.
Yeah.
Like I sometimes see the older ladies in the back row, like their hands are up,
I love
and
that. Yeah.
I'm just like, God, you did that.
Yeah.
You really made a way here at CIV
Mm-hmm.
and really opened their hearts to what worship can be in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also this other couple. I love them so much, but they also serve at our AOK food banks on Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm.
So I see them all the time. But every service on Saturdays, they always come up to me, and they thank me for the worship that just happened.
Yeah.
And those are two people who were going to leave CIV,
Wow.
but they didn't, because they were inspired by Pastor Nim's sermon, and then they really saw the value of worship here at CIV.
Mm-hmm.
And just to see how they've changed and how they view worship, that also just makes me excited for the future, of CIV, because not only what people really think is that worship is just you come to church, you listen to a sermon, pray, take up offering, sing a couple songs, and go home.
Mm-hmm.
But here at CIV, we try to cultivate that lifestyle of worship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Worship is from your Sunday to your Friday, and then Saturday is where you get to commune with others and, just talk about how God has been moving through your life.
Mm-hmm.
And Saturday is that rejoicing day, with everybody. And so to kind of get people on that vision, and to see people really cultivate that now, beside from back then,
Yeah.
it's like black and white.
Yeah.
A lot of people have come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen a lot of people leave, but the numbers of how many people have come into CIV and who want to invest in either their community or worship, whatever it is, I feel like it's been it's just been such a cool thing to see and just experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could talk about corporate worship like for on and on and on, and I feel like we could talk about our what we think and all those things, but ultimately we are here to listen to your faith journey, so we're gonna reel it back just a little bit back into there. In these past few episodes, we've been talking about how we've made this faith our own, and how we've defined what Jesus looks for in our own lives. We've seen it in Pastor Abraham. We've seen it in Pastor Nim. If you haven't watched those episodes, you can check out the channel. But it's such a big thing for a young adult to go through that transition of having a faith that is yours and having a faith that you can claim. And I think now that we're putting it into perspective of worship and what that looks like, it's just it plays a different game. So the question here is, when did this faith become your own, and how big of a part does it play in what you do every day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think I started really... Yeah, I think it's when I came back home.
Mm.
Because I grew up as SDA,
Mm-hmm.
and I did the whole church thing. I, tried to do things right, because also in the back of my mind I was kind of scared, because I was like, oh my goodness, like if I do something wrong, like my aunt's gonna come for me. And
Eternal
everything.
fire.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't want to do any of this stuff. And I didn't really realize my own faith until I think I found out what worship was for me.
Mm.
Because music is so ingrained in my being.
Mm-hmm.
I really started to see who God was in my life through music.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was probably when I was 20 when I really started to study on what worship was, and just really dive into that relationship with God. And a lot of people find themselves trying to figure out their faith maybe into their like 40s or 50s.
Yeah.
But I feel like I was late in the game, because I was like, I feel like I should have known like my relationship with God was, early
Mm-hmm.
on. And especially when I was doing all these things like at church, at school. But it just really came apparent to me when I just sat with myself and with God and was like, hey, listen, like, what is that purpose that you want for me in my life? And where do you want me to go from here? And once I started to have that dialogue with him, I found out who he was in my life and how much of an impact God actually had in my life from then on and going forward. But it was a journey, honestly, to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, for some of us, like you mentioned, like we grew up SDA, and we touched on this even talking about our own faith journey. It's so easy just to be like, also make it a routine thing. Like you don't even think about it because you're just doing it so often, until you realize you make it personal and you make it your own. And I think you're probably thinking like, when did I make it? Why am I so late to the game? I think for anybody as well, like some of us even currently, we're finally realizing what it is to be an SDA at the age of 25 or 30 and making it our own. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like when you grow up with it and it's so constant, it just feels like just a regular thing. I totally get what you mean. Like you're like, I was in this every day. Why didn't I at age like, I don't know, 6 decide that I want to be like, so, and I get that. I feel like it's not really like talked about as much because you think that, because you've known it for your whole life, you had to be like that. But no, I don't think there's ever like a wrong or right time to, fully make it your own. So with that being said, also how, like, you work here, you're here every day. How do you balance also your own faith as well when church is basically like your life, and make time for your own personal growth in the aspect, like, let's not entirely wrapped around what you do come Saturday, like your own faith. How is it that you build that as well?
Yeah, I know. I'm doing like worship has become, my whole life, because it's my job.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, not gonna lie to you, it's hard because I just like, okay, now I have to do another thing and another thing. And sometimes I push it to the side. But there are some days where I'm just like, okay, you know, I actually just really need to sit down, just me and God, and just maybe talk about my day, just like tell him what's going on in my life. And so even though I'm here at my work all the time, I do take a moment in the morning before I even start working. I'll sit here and I'll just start writing and just writing and kind of just telling God, you know, what happened yesterday or what's going to happen today, and just all these things that I would tell him. And then I would take time to just pray over those things that I just said or I just wrote down. And I've tried to be really intentional about those things, because I find that if I do lose those moments in my day in the mornings, that I don't do those things with God, that my whole day really becomes stressful.
Really, yeah.
Because then I just feel like I just load a lot of things onto myself instead of releasing those things to God and just giving it to him. And so I try to just take those pockets in the morning before I even start my work and start planning all these things, just to sit and just be still with him. And I've just found so much joy in it and so much peace that it really gets me. That's the biggest thing that gets me through the day is just that moment. And I, you know, sometimes it takes me half an hour because I just say so much things. But most of the time, you know, I try to take at least 10 to 15 minutes in the morning, just me and God, you know, talking and praying and everything. Or sometimes I'll literally sit at the piano and I'll just like play something or just sing and just kind of have my own time with God in worship. Because I do a lot of things corporately with everybody in worship, that I have to have that own time with God, just meet him.
Yeah, no, it's very hard, I think, even for like even pastors and like the way you lead us as well, to get wrapped up in the work and not really sometimes like to balance those two, your own faith journey and also the way you lead other people through their own faith journeys through worship. But let's maybe switch it up. How has like church or your mentors or I don't want to say colleagues because or like colleagues, like you can call them friends, right? But supported you and encouraged you through your own faith journey as well, like here at CIV?
So much. I think the biggest, because we have a lot of staff, we have a lot of people on staff, but the three main people who I go to all the time is Pastor Nim, Pastor Abraham, and Allison. I think without those three, I would literally be pulling my hair because they're real. Like, they're real with me. You know, they, especially Abraham, like, he is always just, he will say it. He will say it as it is, you know? He won't beat around the bush. Like, if he thinks I need to hear something, like, he'll say it. Or if I need advice on things or if I need help on things, I know I could go to Abraham. Pastor Nim has just been that also great spiritual mentor for me. And it has been a breath of fresh air to have him. Even though he's so new, I feel like Pastor Nim has been here for a long time. And same thing with Abraham, because Abraham has, I think they kind of came one after the other.
Yeah, around the same time,
But I just feel like I have had this relationship with them for a long time that it's so easy to go to them if it's for work advice, for life advice, spiritual advice, whatever it is. Like, they're great people for me to go to. Allison has a special place in my heart.
Shout out.
She has been there from day one since I came here to CIV. She's helped me through so many ups and downs. Like, I don't know. I can talk about Allison forever, but Allison has literally been my rock here at CIV. When I tell you that if it wasn't for Allison here, I definitely would have jumped ship already.
Really, yeah.
Because she was the one who encouraged me to not stop and just keep going. And she just found so much value in me and what I was doing here, and just saw that it was worth it.
Yeah.
And yeah, she is like, I love Allison. She's the best.
Yeah. Yeah, very mom.
Yes.
What if we reel it back to like when you first started? Who were some of the people that like helped you get started? Because I guess when Josh had left to Loma Linda, like who was here to I don't know, bring you back?
It was Allison. Yeah, because the past, I want to say 5 years or so, we've had so many changes in our staff that a lot of people came and went. But Allison is a solid one. She was the one from day one, especially when Josh had left. She was the one who was constantly by my side, always checking in, always making sure that I was okay, that my heart was okay. And yeah, and she also really mentored me in life.
Yeah.
You know, and so I owe a lot to Allison. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And I actually want to like maybe deep dive into the sense of like woman in leadership, because like I don't think people know also Allison does so much for Church in the Valley. I mean, she doesn't have title as pastor, but she leads here and she does a lot. And also as a woman, I think it's incredible, because if I'm going to be real with you, I look up to her a lot as well.
Yeah.
And in the sense of also you're talking about her, I look up to you as well as women in leadership. And I don't want to speak for anybody also, but I know Esther and I really appreciate the things that you do here. And it's so refreshing also to see people of, like, you know, my own peers in the sense leading our congregation, whether it be through worship or when you spoke or when Allison spoke, you know, the knowledge that you guys can share with us, regardless of, like, you know, whatever title you guys have, because I think there's so much that we don't know that goes behind the scenes of everything to run the whole service, and not even the service, like this church as a whole.
Yeah.
And Allison and you have, I know Jolly, so I know the roles that she's had to put on, not only as like worship director, but also, you know, like in other ministries, like, you know, food bank and, you know, front desk and all these things that we don't see that play a part in to making CIV what it is. And it's not just Saturday, because you're also putting in the work Monday through Friday. Until recently, they gave you a day off, you know.
Yeah, shout out to Pastor Nim.
Yeah, exactly.
But day offs are great.
You and like Alice, I just look up to women empowerment. You know what I mean? I'm always here for it.
Here for it too.
Yeah, and I think even like at times it was Sunday to Saturday.
Oh yeah,
you're here all the time, putting in the work. So how about like what are your? I don't want to. If it's problematic, you don't have to say much. But like your experiences with being a woman in leadership, and how has that been for you? I don't want to speak too much on anybody else's experience, but for you at least, like.
Yeah, I think it was a little hard, obviously, for me in the beginning, because not only was it just Allison and I, but I was the only female in leadership who was up front. Until then Pastor Anderline came. Pastor Anderline was our other AOK outreach pastor that we had before Pastor Sabina came. Yeah. And so I just remember my conversations with Pastor Anderline, and she said, you know, it's going to be brutal. Yeah. But God didn't place you here for no reason.
Love her. Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, you're right.
Yeah. Oh,
You know, and so I really held on to that because God really doesn't put you in a place where he knows that you can't handle it.
Yeah.
And I just always go back to those conversations I would have with Pastor Anderline, and I would forget about those things that people say, or, you know, not having women being in leadership, or women can't speak, whatever it is, you know. But my thing that I always go back to is that, you know, God put me here for a reason.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to follow what he wants and what his leading is.
Yeah.
And call it a day.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you like also say, like, in terms of, not even, we're talking about people in general. We love the woman empowerment, but talking
Don't
to
get canceled now.
talking to what do I try to say? I'm trying to be more general in terms of the things that we're talking about. So, what would you say to maybe a young adult or a young person who is trying to get things started in their church, trying to make those changes without getting anybody in trouble or getting anybody hurt or anything like that? What would you say to someone who's trying to start up some change in their church? Maybe not even in the worship sense, but in the leadership sense, in the structure sense, and just like a young adult trying to get into leadership. What would you say is the most important thing in the formula?
I think first you need to know who you're leading. Because if you don't know who you're leading, you're just going to get lost in your vision, because then your vision becomes of what I want instead of what my church and community need and what God wants me to pour into them.
Yeah.
And then second, I think you will need to have that relationship with especially your lead pastor. You know, it's important to have a good relationship with them and to know also where their vision is in the church as a whole. Because if you and your lead pastor don't have the same vision, then it's going to cause friction. It's going to be hard for you. But then also, to go back to it, they need to be open into having young people in leadership. Because if they don't, then you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
Then I just say, go find a place. Go find somewhere else, because there are other churches where people are going to support young people in leadership. And then I think the third thing is just to be bold and just to be yourself. Like, you don't have to put up this facade of being this super mature young adult or young person, because then it's like you're just putting yourself out there to fail. You know, if they see that you are real and that you genuinely care about the church, about the community, they're going to give you a chance.
Yeah.
You know, and it just comes with having relationships with people, like genuine relationships with people. Because just, for example, like if you didn't know who Pastor Nim was or Pastor Abraham was, and you were new to CIV, and you were like, hey, look, I want to start this thing up here. You'd be like, oh, okay, you know, like, we'll think about it. But if you actually had a conversation with them, sat down with them, got to know them, and then later on, you know, lined up what your vision was, then it'll be a lot easier for them to be open to what you do want to see come into light. Yeah.
Yeah, no. That's good. I mean, I feel like this has been a topic as of recent. We've been talking, I think we mentioned this a little bit with Pastor Nim as well, you know, giving young adults that platform to not only to lead, but I think to fail as well. Like,
fail forward.
Yeah. Like, even when you were saying, like, just to be authentically you, and it's so easy to put on this, like you said, facade of, like, yeah, I want to prove I'm mature enough for the older people. I think that's the reason why we do that, if I'm going to be real. So that we don't be taken, like, so we're taken seriously, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of us, we try so hard that it's not authentic anymore. If I'm going to be real, even like me, like I was before we started pressing play, like I was so trying to compose myself, but I'm also thinking, I'm like, why do I have to be so serious? Like, just like let yourself just be who you are. And I appreciate also you, Jolly, the path you've made for us young adults as well, like everything that you've done since you started here at 20. Yeah, that's crazy. 20. Like, I'm thinking like Esther's 20 right now. That's like Esther being thrown into something like that, you know?
Literally not to age drop myself, but
Yeah.
like that's 6 years.
Relax.
Yeah.
Like, relax. You know?
But I even think about like you at 20, like, because you and I are like not that
Far in age.
yeah. Right? And you were like, to me, I was like, wow, like, you know, that's so incredible to see someone just close to my age and do that. And I think, sorry, I keep saying Esther's name, but even if Esther were to be thrown into something like that,
Her sister.
like, yeah.
If you didn't know.
Her sister, that Esther's
Like,
her sister.
I truly believe she could do it. You know what I mean? Because like 20, yeah, it sounds like a scary number when you, like you said, you're a baby, but there's so much also that we can like pour into people that age. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry, Esther, I'm saying your name again. Esther, serving young adult leadership. You know what I mean? Like that age, like we're also been. I'm 23, so I'm a 23.
Guys,
3-year-old adult. I'm a 3-year-old.
We talk like we're 30 now. Like, we need to chill out. Like 20 wasn't that long ago.
Okay, I was 20.
feels
I was
like it was that long
COVID, so
ago.
technically I didn't really live my.
I know.
20.
I'm trying to like think back. Like, what was I doing when I was 20?
Yeah, I definitely was in lockdown. But with that being said, I mean, like, yeah, when you're 20, it's like you think you're still young, but there's so much you can learn as well. I learned from my own sister sometimes, you know, and you know, sometimes it's hard to give people the benefit of the doubt, but like to also lean into that, like there's a lot we can learn, and I appreciate that CIV is giving that platform as well. So like I said, not only to grow, but to fail and then learn from our failures as well.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Especially like growing up, I was always told that your most plastic years, like your brain plasticity, is the highest when you're a teenager or when you're in that age of adolescence. But honestly, for me, I think that it's when you are in that growing stage after that part of your life. Because up to that point in your life, when you're 18, you're still in high school, you still live with your parents, you're still living under their roof, under their rules. So now when you're in your 20s or your mid-20s, like this is the time where you're making the real big decisions in your life. And I feel like even more than when you're a teenager, you are more open to learning new things and trying new things. And in that way, you become more moldable when you're in that age. Yeah. So I think there's no better time than that age to get into leadership and to start doing those things, because you're just so ready to, or I just think like when I was 20, like I thought I could do anything. Like I was just so ready to take on the world, and then the pandemic happened and I was like, oh, bleh.
You're like, actually, world
lost
stop.
3 years.
You know what I mean though? Like when you're 20, you're like, oh, I'm 20. Like this is actually when life begins. And when we reach that age, we're just so ready to try new things, which is why I think in my mind that's like the best time to step
Esther.
into a thing of leadership. Are you trying to say tell Esther to get into a leadership?
No, I mean, I'm just saying, like, to all the 20 years out there, like, we see you, like, you know.
Even if you're not 20, if you're like
19 high school or
21,
honestly,
17.
I think
Perfect time.
even
Get on
high
it.
school, like, as a kid, when we're in high school, I mean, to be honest, I never really took it as serious as I did when I got older, but, like, when I would lead in chapels, you know, that stepping stones of what we do when we were in high school, and also to be intentional when we're outside of school and make it our own, because like when you said, it's like when you were in 2018
Yeah.
you were outside of high school already.
Mm-hmm.
You did your own thing.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, this is what I want to do now. And you weren't even like going to like any other, let's say, school that had, because I feel like for us, when you go to school and you're, for Christian schools, right, for Seventh-day Adventists, when you step out of that, you're like, who am I now? That school isn't my life anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, you know, when you're transitioning into that age, you never know where God's going to lead you, like, regardless of what age you are.
I also think of, like, all of the people that I've seen leave the church, it's usually around that age. Or late, like, a little later, maybe, like, 22, 23. But there's something about growing up in leadership during those stages of your life when you're making those crucial decisions that changes the trajectory of whether you're going to stay or leave the church.
Yeah, and I think like it's not even like just leadership. Like I feel like in that age, like they just need purpose.
Yeah.
They need purpose in the church. So even if that's asking them to help at a ministry or help, you know, collect offering, whatever it is, you know, that age, they just need some kind of purpose and they just need people to hear them. And sadly enough, that's just not what's happening in our churches around. And so that's why we always see our young people leave the church, is because they either don't feel loved or they don't feel heard or seen, or they just don't have purpose in their church or community.
So, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want to ask you, now that I'm going back into it, like when you were at that age and transitioning, I feel like obviously there's been a shift up in the way of how we support our young people. But that takes a toll on your mental health when you have these emails coming in and to a 20-year-old, you know, at that time, like, how did you, like, I can't even imagine, like, the toll it took on your mental health. What kept you sane, though, like, during all of that? Because I want to also, like, for the kids out there that are also maybe struggling, whether it be not here at Church in the Valley or somewhere else, what did you hold on to that you were like, yeah,
I honestly, I held on to what my purpose was here and what God's purpose was for me. Because I feel like without that, I would have been gone already. But at that point, even like the first or second month into me being in this ministry, in the leadership position, like I cried my eyes out like every single week. But at the same time, I feel like God was always reminding me, like, you are here for a reason. I want you here, and I know that you are going to make an impact in this church and in this community. But there was times where I was like, no, you know, like, go pick somebody else, you know, not me. But constantly I feel like God was always like nudging me, and he's always tapping me on the shoulder, like really pushing me and just telling me like, no, I need you here, you know, and this is where I want you planted. And that also just came with me knowing my relationship with God and what he wanted for me and for my life. I think that's also one of the hard things for young people. You know, we don't give them the space to truly know who God is in their life. And so, because that's the biggest thing, you know, like without that, I feel you're going to be lost.
Yeah.
You're gonna have all these excuses, or then it'll just turn into like blame on the church, like, oh, the church didn't do this, the church didn't do this.
Right.
But then, you know, we didn't actually take the time to invest in them, or we didn't take the time to give them the space to actually truly know who God is in their life. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I'm curious now, though. Like, I feel like you have such a unique perspective on these kind of things, just because of your role in the church now. But can I ask, what age were you baptized?
But
Oh my gosh, I
love this question.
was a baby. I think I was 12.
really,
Yeah, I was so young.
yeah,
That seems like
Yeah, I think I was 12.
That
It was
seems-
either 11 or 12.
that's like
I
SDA
forget.
core.
yeah.
Like getting baptized young. Like, what were you baptized?
Oh, I was baptized at 17, 18.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
for you,
So
Alex.
no, and I think
Let's
it
go.
also depends on the way because my parents, and I don't want to speak on the way anybody was raised.
Yeah.
My dad was very vocal, like when you're ready on your own time.
Yeah.
And I and when the church that I was going to, all my friends were getting baptized at age 12, and I thought I was like, they look so cool. Look at them as a group. I want to be up there.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also to a point where I was like, I know in the back of my head baptism is something so important. And I fortunately, I had that mindset of like, just because everyone else was doing doesn't mean I have to go and do it.
Yeah.
And that's why I waited till I was ready to get baptized. Even still, I think at age 17 or 18, I still was very young.
Yeah.
Young
Cool,
Christian
okay.
baby. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's not to say I would not get rebaptized again in the sense of like, I want to fully be, like in tune with everything that also I believe in as an SDA. But I think even at 12, like also, I think it's, I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing, like the way we were raised
I think so.
I think.
in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
church when
What
we
was
were
the
that
point?
age.
There's a point to
but,
this question. Wait, I got
like,
it.
I love
No.
that question.
I love that question. I guess like, what is different now, in terms of your faith with like what did it look like when you got baptized, and what does it look like now? Like what's the difference in your faith?
Yeah, when I got baptized, it was literally my grandma was like, "Oh, so and so is getting baptized, or they're doing Bible studies.
Mm,
Do you want to do Bible studies as well?"
yeah.
And I mean, those are my friends, and I was like, "Yeah, sure,
Free
Sounds
hangout.
familiar.
yeah, I'll
Yeah.
do some Bible studies, eat some snacks while we're at it, you know."
Mhm.
And then it's like, bam, you're baptized. You know, quick like 7-week study, and I was like, okay, done. You know, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be saved. Great. No,
for
for real.
I
For
literally said the
real.
exact same thing in the first episode.
No, seriously,
Yeah.
for real. Like,
Stop it. My ticket is saved in heaven.
No,
Thank you,
that's
God.
Yeah, no.
Ticket signed, sealed, delivered. That's
yeah,
it.
because
Yeah.
my I remember my grandma and grandpa. They were like, you know, you are going to go to heaven if you get baptized. And I was like,
That fear-based kind
okay,
of thing. You're
great.
just like,
You know,
right
I'll
in-
do it.
Okay.
And so that was then.
Yeah.
Now, like the way I see like God and the way my faith is my own instead of my family's, it's definitely changed like a whole lot. You know, God is my best friend now, you know, and he's not just some being or something that was talked about or discussed or was like, hey, you know, you won't get to heaven if you don't do these things. Like now I have this relationship with God where it's honestly sometimes I'm like, I wish I could just get rebaptized again
Yeah.
and just like confess my faith and like
Yeah.
my love to God, because now it's like so ingrained in who I am, and I just constantly want to show God that you know I'm his.
Yeah.
You know, everything I am, everything I do, like is just for his glory. But yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna ask another question. Well,
Go off. Go off.
I just like they're just coming. These are
Yeah,
just coming
yeah.
in the moment.
It's good.
If you're listening, these are just coming in the moment. I had the same idea, where like you get baptized, that's it, you're saved, straight to heaven. You know, like that's my ticket. So, what would you say yourself? Like, how has your view on salvation changed?
That's a deep one.
That's crazy,
Yeah.
right? It's
Okay,
not a
we'll
ticket,
let you,
right?
We'll let you sit with that one a little bit. It's all good. All good.
Maybe that's a question we answer in another episode.
Yeah, I think that's a big one to unpack. Seriously.
Come tune in next time. We'll talk about salvation.
Jolly Part 2.
But
You gotta. Yeah.
yeah, that's
Deep
loaded.
question. Eh?
Yeah. I mean, I think it looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
And I don't want to speak for everybody, but
Guess what?
it
I'm packing
shifts.
it next
It
time.
shifts. It shifts. So
Yeah.
it's different. Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
He's
It just came up. It just came up.
Stumped.
It just came up.
Stumped.
It just came up. It just came up.
No, but
Okay.
no, that's good. That's good. I mean, something to think about, not only for her, but like for everyone out there as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
How has your view of salvation changed?
you're making me think too. I'm also like,
We can unpack it next time.
Yeah. To be continued.
yeah. How do you recover?
Why don't we come back? It's my bad. My bad.
No, it's all good. No, and I think that's also like a great thing as well. Like when we're sitting here and talking, I'm gonna be honest with you, sometimes we have these questions and
Yeah.
we're just trying to like go off these questions. But things like that happen where
Yeah.
we're just
We
you
can
know.
save it. We can save it. Let's reel it back in. Okay, we're talking a lot about worship. Yeah. So what is? Let's finish that on a good note. What's your favorite worship song, and why does it resonate with you? Or it could be a hymn. We love traditional music here. Hymn, CCM, gospel. What's your vibe?
Yeah. So I listen to worship music like all the time,
praise 106.5.
but it's also part of my job, like, you know.
yeah.
But I've honestly, I just love, because worship music has kind of turned into people's stories and their walks with God, or how they're feeling, how God has moved. And so this song that I've honestly is on repeat all the time for me, and I think it also just resonates with the journey of where God has gotten me from day one until up to now. It's called Use Me, Lord by VU Worship. But the beginning of the song, it starts off with, I'm at the altar, dying again, crushed for a purpose, oil within, my life a living offering. You are the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me, Lord, have your way. My heart surrendered to your hand. You can use me, Lord. And I just kind of think back to kind of where I started, and also just my life journey in general. Like, God, even though there was all these things that happened in my life, God always found purpose in me, and he never once left me. He would always pick me back up and always told me that I'm going to use you for the better, even if you don't see it now, but I need you to keep going for me,
Yeah.
so that in those moments where you really struggled, that's where I am really molding you to become the person that I want you to be. And so, yeah, that song has really struck a chord for me the past like month or so that I've kind of found it. But, and I think also I love hymns, but I think one of the hymns that's one of my favorites is How Great Thou Art. Love that song. I think in the chorus it's like, then sings my soul, my Savior God. Seriously, like, my soul is always singing praises for God. Whatever moment it is, like, I'm always just either mentally like on my knees or physically on my knees, like always just giving thanks for who God is, and who he has been in my life. But those are probably, I think you guys asked for one, but I gave you two.
That's okay.
Hey,
Let's
two
keep
for
it
one.
we
Two
can
for one.
get.
We'll take it.
Yeah, no, but that's beautiful, and thank you for sharing not only that but also your story and the journey you had to go through to get to where you are, even though you've been in the church for all your life, but there's also struggles within that. So yeah, thanks for also I don't want to say going through it for us, but sticking to it, because it's tough. And for those out there who also don't know what's their next step in leadership, or even as a 20-year-old in the church, there you go.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
We've also just I feel like we've only scratched the surface of Jolly Grace's faith story.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear more, you can let us know.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll make a part 2, or you could just find her and ask her yourself. I'm sure she'd be willing to share if she's open to that.
Yeah.
Or you could find her It Is
Take
Written.
her out for coffee, sit her down, and then you'll get
her It Is Written series.
Yeah.
You can watch those too, but the things you're talking now and the things that you've gone through, it's just crazy to think that you're still up here serving.
Serving.
That's crazy.
Serving.
But yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode.
We got a lot more. So if there's anything you ever want to hear specifically, don't forget to follow our Instagram, and also Valley Co as well. We'll be asking what you guys want to hear. And thanks to guys again for tuning in, and see you soon.
Don't forget to love God,
Love people,
and serve the world.
Yeah.
There you go.
Till next time.
See you guys.